Welcome to the MHP CashFlow Podcast, where we dive deep into the world of mobile home park investing, real estate strategies, and building long-term passive income. Hosted by Garrett, Terrell, real estate investor, mobile home park operator, and founder of Rocket Capital Fund.
All right, everyone, welcome back to the MHP CashFlow Podcast. I am your host, Garrett Terrell, and today we have an awesome guest on, my good friend Armand Violi, who has brokered and sold $120 million worth of mobile home parks in the last 4 years. Super excited to have him on and chat about the MHP space. Armand, what is up, dude?
What's up, man? Hey, glad to be on the show. Good. We're able to sit down and talk again. I appreciate you coming on my podcast last time, so I'm excited to be on yours.
Absolutely. Yeah, thanks for coming on. So, dude, we got a lot to talk about today. $120 million in 4 years is not a small amount of money. That is a lot of parks.
Yeah, it's good. Hopefully I'll be able to share some of kind of my processes and like deal sourcing methods and, just how I get 100%. Deals across the finish line, underwriting and stuff. So
why did you want to get into the MHP space? Let's just start there, right? Because the MHP space is not very popular. Not a lot of people know about it. So even on the brokering side, why'd you want to get into the MHP space?
Yeah, so I got into brokerage not necessarily for mobile home parks. Similar to you or probably anyone else, we were just interested in commercial real estate as a whole. I first came across commercial real estate through Grant Cardone, and I was like, I'm going to become a real estate syndicator and buy big apartment buildings and everything. So became a real estate agent, total waste of time doing residential, at least for real estate agent purposes, I thought, because I closed like my first deal was like $2,000, like $2,300 I got by the end of it. I'm like, I'm definitely not getting rich doing this. So I was getting out of college. I needed to get a daytime job so I could keep cold calling real estate. Still didn't know about commercial real estate, but I was like, let me see if I can get a commercial real estate job, which isn't even a thing really because brokerage is all commission only. So I applied for a leasing agent job for a mobile home park. Coincidentally, I was just like spam clicking leasing agent jobs.
Really?
And then it ended up being I applied to be the agent at a park that Enon Winkler, who owns the brokerage I'm still with today, but one of his parks, and his like property management regional manager was like, hey, we're actually trying to grow a brokerage team. And I looked him up. He was a big multifamily broker before becoming one of the first mobile home park brokers. He was well established, but pretty much I show up there, I pitch him like, I'm ready to cold call and do all this, but I didn't even know what a mobile home park was. And then he walked me through. It was like similar to multifamily, but obviously mobile home parks, there's an added component of lot rents versus park on home rents. But aside from that, it pretty much underwrites and operates very similar to multifamily. And then, just got started in that. Was a long start time frame because obviously in the commercial real estate space, we're dealing with 90-day plus transaction timelines, and it's much harder to source deals. But like once I built up a database, closed the first deal and was a hefty check, and then eventually built up from there. Now I have like a whole coordinated long email, text blast, marketing funnels aside from cold calling. But it was a long process, but that's how I got into the mobile home park space. It was totally unknown to me. I had no idea what a mobile home park was at first. And then, it's a good asset class specifically for like lower barrier to entry. Just from a competitive standpoint, it's a little more secret. At least back then, it was more of a secret in the industry than it is now. Definitely competitive to get in now. It's pretty much, we see new people entering the space and tons of investor money from other asset classes come into it. But that was pretty much the gist of how I got in. Yeah.
That's awesome. So you basically partnered up with like a mentor and you're like, hey, dude, I did residential for a little bit, didn't make a lot of money. Yep. Now I want to get into some bigger commission checks, right?
Yeah, and if I was starting from scratch, like I really don't see how, unless someone already has money. All right, camera switch.
Okay.
The camera switch. Apologize, guys. Unless for someone to get into the commercial real estate game, it's probably the best way is to work under someone else that knows how to underwrite, because something you probably learned coming from your extensive background in real estate and then the mobile home park space now where you're thriving, the underwriting knowledge and operations knowledge is extremely hidden and not as publicly accessible. And then even to this day, there's still a lot of operators that don't know the most optimal way to operate parks. So I definitely recommend if someone was to try and get in commercial real estate, definitely latch on under someone else that already knows how to underwrite or do deals.
That's huge. Yeah, because, even when I was in the residential side on the brokering side, because I was technically a residential agent for 5 years, and did a lot of transactions, and, did about 20 to 25 million a year in residential sales, which was a good, solid, active income base. But I would see a lot of people that would just come in and, get licensed and then not know what to do and sit there in 6 months, and then they'd go get a job in month 7, but what I saw and what I did was kind of link up with a mentor. A good buddy of mine in Washington, Joe Simonet, shout out to Joe, taught me everything, literally from start to finish, gave me a couple opportunities. I came in kind of like you, hungry and ready to go. And, I was like, man, I want to call, I want to do some deals, and gave me a lot of opportunities, but I excelled greatly because I had a mentor. So I think it's really important to have a mentor, in the business starting out. So love that. That's awesome. Yeah. So let's go 100%. Into some of your marketing channels, right? Yeah. And I'm curious about this question. I'm curious about how you're going to answer this. Cause I got this when I was younger in the industry, and you're what, 28, 29, right?
27 now, actually.
27. Okay. So I know you've gotten this question. I know you've gotten this question. Why should we trust you? You look young. You look like a baby. You're brand new into the industry. Why should we trust you? Why should we sell our mobile home park with you versus anybody else? How did you kind of overcome those objections from sellers?
Yeah, so in the beginning, especially being a younger guy, and then even to this day, still sounding younger on the phones, and aside from having a track record now at this point and having years in the industry, the biggest thing when it comes to anything, deal sourcing or marketing of your mobile home park, is you can make up anything, like your lack of experience, with an increase in knowledge. So something that I really focus on, especially on the marketing front when it comes to selling clients mobile home parks or just sourcing deals, let's say I was on the buy side or whatever. One, having the knowledge to actually underwrite mobile home parks to an exact metric, rather than a lot of agents out there who, they ballpark back of the napkin numbers. Like, hey, if I take your total income, I put a 40% expense ratio at an 8 cap. Yeah, let's go sell it at that park. That doesn't tell the full story of what a potential buyer is going to be willing to pay for it. So understanding how to actually underwrite to exact cash on cash return metrics, understanding how to pro forma out a 5-10 year internal rate of return gives you more knowledge to negotiate better offers for your sellers, or if you're a buyer, better offers for yourself, because you understand all of the little levers within that you could pull on and push on to try and get the returns that you need. So a lot of what I did, especially in the beginning, and I'm thankful for Enon actually coaching me really well in understanding the underwriting of mobile home parks, was when I look at a potential deal, whether it's to list or something to buy, I don't underwrite to just, hey, I'm looking for these type of returns going in year one, or like cap rates are almost irrelevant to me. Really, it's, hey, with cost of capital, cost of debt, what's my actual cash on cash returns, and what's my actual projected internal rate of return over a hold period going to look like? So I'm able to kind of tailor offers or negotiate offers if I could see what the buyers kind of metrics they're looking at. Like, hey, if that buyer really needs to hit a 10% preferred return, but they have a longer transaction timeline, I know I could renegotiate that offer on, like, hey, I know debt's going to come in at this. If we push on this lever and you can cover your 10% pref, they might be willing to bend a little bit on the total purchase price because of the 5-year hold period that I know that they're targeting. Let's say it's a fund that, or a syndication that has a 5-year hold period. Or on the flip side, if we're negotiating with a buyer who's only cash flow driven, now we could start to modify those terms, whether it be offering some seller financing to try and bring their cost of debt down, or, there's different levers to pull on. So the first thing was figuring out exactly how to underwrite parks to an exact science, not just back of the napkining it. Now, aside from that, on the marketing front, and this plays into a lot of my deal sourcing and just deal marketing now, most brokers, obviously, you're going to do a thing where you just slap it online, put it on Crexy, LoopNet, call your relationships, and, make calls around a property. I do all of those similar processes, but the way I was able to get a lot of listings, win a lot of clients, get a lot of deals done is I take a very mathematical approach to one, not only building an accurate database with really good research, but also doing other marketing channels with coordinated email and text blast systems and funnels. So that way, if a client is wondering, hey, what's marketing looking like on my listing with you? It's not that I just say, hey, interest is low or interest is high. I actually send them exact metrics like, hey, per these amount of views, we get this many people downloading information. All of these people downloading information are sending me this type of feedback. I'm able to provide concrete evidence as to why your park is or isn't trading, and we adjust accordingly to get parks sold. So to give you an example, now that I have a track record, a few things like there's a few markets that I still hold the records of like price per pad for even small to mid-sized type parks, but pretty much like I have a 90% transaction rate on anything that I actually list and take to market. And then when you look at my underwriting strike price versus actual trade price, I'm within 97% of my trade range I give them. That doesn't mean marketing range. So like maybe I underwrite a park and maybe I underwrite a park. Let's say you want to list a park with me and I tell you, hey, it's worth $2 million. I'm going to tell you, let's shoot for 2-3. Here's why I can make a mathematical kind of push for that. But for when I underwrite realistic trade range, I'm always within 97% of where it ultimately trades. Unless we find out something in DD like, hey, there's a caved-in septic tank or something like that. But yeah, knowledge and stats is something I heavily rely on rather than, because I don't have that, 10 years in the industry, I'm a younger guy kind of thing.
Yeah. So you overcame a lot of that by becoming the expert and actually showing your value, right? Not just like saying, hey, we have all these buyers, we have, we're the best in this, and this, like a lot of different brokerages do. You actually showed them physically, hey, this is our percentages based on the underwriting that we present to these buyers. This is a price range that we think we can hit with you. That's huge. Yeah, that's valuable for a seller.
Yeah, and another example, like I know I haven't listed or like we've almost gotten a deal together before, but as far as like representing you in a listing, we haven't done. But as an example, like a marketing report that I do on anyone that's listed with me, I send the exact list with cell phones and email addresses with commentary and stats on everyone that comes through. So when I say like, hey, my email blast is going out to 15,000 people, you're going to get 8,000 views in your property, there's 150 people that downloaded the information, I share that actual exact info. It's not just hey guys, a lot of people are looking at your property. It's actual stats that people see.
That's amazing. That's super valuable for a seller too. I mean, and so with those marketing channels, I mean, I know you're building a team or have a team right now. And are you calling some of those buyers as they are downloading the information and you're kind of working an offer with them, or what does that process look like for actually selling a park?
Yeah, so this will be good info for anyone considering selling their park. I'll give you pretty much the overall playbook that I do for marketing. Now, can a random person who's not a broker do a lot of this? Probably not, because you have to build a lot of back-end systems, but the overall gist is, aside from putting a deal on Crexy and relationships over time, there's kind of a 3-stage thing that I do for every single deal I'm trying to sell. The first thing is create a centralized platform for people to download the information that tracks who downloaded that information. Essentially just like a listing link. Everyone does that. It's not any rocket science. But the first thing is call every surrounding mobile home park owner within a 3-hour radius. Again, that's pretty standard stuff. Call all relationships and known buyers in the state. Again, still standard stuff. It just takes a lot of time. But aside from that, my entire database that I've built over time from just surrounding owner calls and cold calling for leads, it's generating essentially a buyer's list, other similar property type owners and people in the industry just reaching out. But sending a series of email blasts and text blasts in addition to calls to potential buyers that routes to a centralized download platform. That download platform tracks data of who to follow up with. Most brokers, again, if it goes to a Crexy page, it tells you who downloaded the info, and they'll call interested parties.
Nice.
The problem with that approach, though, is that on any given listing, for example, I have over 250 people that download the actual information, aside from 5,000 people that look at the listing page. Most brokers will just send one of their interns to go call down that list and see if anyone's interested. But most people don't answer 90% of the time when you call them. So like I hit them with a series of emails and text blasts to every single person that looks at the page. And it goes down essentially a funnel to where they get touched 4 to 5 weeks after the fact, nonstop. So anyone that even has a little bit of interest, there's a 0% chance that I'm not capturing that interest when I'm marketing.
Right.
Rather than, you know, if you have 200 people that look at, that maybe potentially look at your deal, I'm sure even yourself, if there's something that you're pushing out, you kind of forget to follow up with some certain people. The difference is like I have automatic text and email blast funnels that follow up with them on repeat. And it doesn't even seem like an automated message. They think it's actually me, but it makes sure that anyone with even a little bit of interest, we close that full loop, whether they were interested or not, what kind of feedback and what are the reasons for not wanting that property. So really it's just taking the process that everyone knows for marketing a property, but just 10xing it and then optimizing it to where we don't miss any potential leads on your property if you were to list it with us, for example. So like if there's anyone that breathes and clicks a link and even shows the tiniest bit of interest in your property, we're going to make sure that we understand why they were interested, why they weren't interested. That way we could try and negotiate a better offer for you.
And you're doing deals all across the nation, right? Or just primarily in Florida or...
Yeah, all across the nation. Really, my strongholds is more so like the Southeast region, the Carolinas, Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, Florida, and then the Midwest. It's not that I necessarily focus on those regions, but as I've gotten listings over time and I'm calling surrounding owners and other buyers are potentially downloading info, my database is just built out rapidly in those areas. But yeah, I do work nationwide. The marketing approach is it's territory agnostic. It's just optimizing a sales funnel.
Oh, I didn't even ask you about this. How are you doing in Florida with the hurricane? Because you're in Tampa, right?
Yeah, dude, I'm right here in the thick of it. Everyone's pretty much like honestly, no one's working in Tampa except me right now. But hey, money doesn't sleep.
Wow. Yeah. So I mean, have they told you guys to like evacuate at all, or like what's the process for that? Like,
yeah, they have. You know, you see a lot of crazy stuff in the news now. This hurricane is worse than most people have dealt with, but like the city does a really good job of having like, hey, here's your evacuation zones and risk factors. So there's like the, hey, get out now, like exact evacuation, and then there's like a optionary evacuation area. So I'm right on the cusp of the mandatory evacuation, but I'm also in like a 27-story building that I'm not worried about flooding. So, but yeah, dude, a lot of people like I'm in my office building right now in Ybor City. The guy with the office next to me, he lives in one of the high-risk places. He's staying in his office for the next few days.
You're kidding.
Until the hurricane passes through.
Oh, my gosh. So what do I mean, it's clearly going to come through, right? It's not like it's like veering off. I mean, what do park owners do in there? Because there's a lot of park owners in Tampa, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Dude, I don't know what they do, to be honest. Like most people in Florida, the one good thing is with hurricanes last year and recent times, like most people who bought parks had to get hazard insurance just to get bank financing. So a lot of park owners are covered. Yeah. But just because you're covered by insurance does not mean you're in a good position for your tenants to come back and start paying rent once your homes are rehabbed. So, you know, it's not a good look for a lot of people in Florida. Occupancy is going to be dropping and insurance costs are going to go up. So, yeah, my heart goes out to people in Florida because it's a tough gig.
It's terrible. Yeah. And that's already a risk for me when I look at deals in Florida is I have to be aware of things like that. Right. And it's really, I will be honest, it's really hard to underwrite in Florida because you don't know what the insurance or the taxes are going to be. I mean, you can look at the millage rate, but really, I mean, we got a quote on a deal that was almost 4 times more expensive than what the current sellers provided us in insurance. It's like, it's impossible to underwrite stuff like that, you know? So so much of like the business I do, I don't really focus in on Florida much because of those issues. Like insurance is all over the board. Like there was a few deals I did recently and like we got insurance quotes from as low as $5,000 to as high as $15,000 for the same park. And it's kind of like,
what are these insurance adjusters underwriting? Like there's no predictability in the Florida markets for the most part, which is I think why you see a lot of core Florida operators really take over, because they know what their assumptions are going to be because they already have multiple parks. But someone outside of Florida like yourself, it's so hard to break in. It's almost like why even try?
And that's probably why a lot of Florida owners, they tend to probably lean towards tenant-owned homes versus park-owned homes because of that insurance risk, right? It's like, you can make a little bit more money on the park-owned, but in Florida, where it's a high-risk market, I totally get having everything on tenant-owned, so you're not individually insuring a 1976 single-wide, Yeah. 100%. So I totally get that. Now, in the Midwest, where lot rents are maybe $300, but you can get a park-owned home rent for $950, might be a different story, right?
Totally.
So, and we still need to do a deal together. I think we will. We were really close on that Montgomery deal, which I still think is a deal, by the way. I still like that deal. I love it. If we can put the terms together.
I'm still in talks with the seller, but it's really his expectations haven't came down. And then there's rough factors to the park that we already went through. It's a tougher deal. It's not an easy one.
It's a tougher one. I like it though. Great amount of units, great amount of lots. I mean, what's the biggest deal you've sold so far?
Yeah, $9.7 million in the Raleigh, North Carolina market.
Nice.
Can't say
how many pads?
It's about 100. Going off memory, a little under 120 sites. I want to say like 110, 115, something like that.
Wow, that's not that much for 9.6, 9.7.
Oh yeah, dude, it was like high 80 something per site, but it was like right in the Raleigh MSA, and a large, well-known North Carolina buyer who can afford to kind of roll that up with his portfolio. So price per site, he was way more aggressive than anyone else I knew on it. Yeah,
that's amazing. I thought you were going to say like 350 sites, 450 sites, something like that. But no, Raleigh, North Carolina, that is a great market.
Yeah.
And I don't think they got hit by the hurricane, right?
No, Raleigh didn't get hit that hard. I know Asheville did, but that was because of flooding with their kind of river waterways that run through the town. But yeah, I think Raleigh did okay.
So are the majority of your buyers, like what you're seeing, let's say in the last 12 months, are they looking for more equity plays over the course of 3 to 5 years, or are they buying specifically for cash flow day one? What are you seeing in that?
Yeah. So it's very market driven. When it comes to high growth major MSAs, totally equity plays, year one cash flows are not irrelevant, but it's not as big of a factor as if you're looking at a secondary market, like let's say, I don't know, like the outskirts of Cleveland and Ohio. Like it's going to be much more cash flow day one driven. The number one impact I see of values, having been in the industry before the interest rate rise through COVID, after COVID, with the crazy low interest rates, and then seeing it now, interest rates went up super high, and then things are starting to kind of level off and stabilize, and there's a lot more transactions happening this year. Probably the number one biggest predictor is year one cash on cash returns, because most of the larger syndicators and funds need to pay a preferred return to their investors.
Yes.
But if you could cover their preferred returns in year one, or just show a good roadmap, like, hey, within the first year you can get to your preferred returns, it's really an equity play over 5 years. Like a lot of people aren't as cash flow driven. As long as they could pay their pref and there's solid upside with the deal, then you could get to that pricing. So like when I'm underwriting properties and, trying to predict, hey, what's a realistic value this is going to trade at? Like the high range of that really lines up with, can I hit the preferred returns of investors? So
yes,
like right now, 8% preferred returns is where everyone's mostly quoting. Some people are doing 10% preferred returns. So when I'm underwriting, there's a range with where bank debt's going to come in. But once I dial in that range of like realistic bank debt terms, optimizing for 8 to 10% cash on cash seems to be the biggest predictor of where things are going to trade.
That's huge. And I'm glad you say that, because like, for me, if I don't hit the preferred return or any type of return for the investor, the deal doesn't happen.
Yeah, there's no there's no deal.
There's no deal. So it's like so it's got a cash flow from day one. I can't look at a 7.5 cap with 7.25% debt because there's no money in it for anybody, you know, and an investor is not going to want to wait 3 years to get some type of return. So it's like, sorry, but the cap rate's going to have to be higher on this one in order to purchase it. So I'm glad you say that, because that's, most brokers do not care. They're like, this
they're
is
just
a
like,
7
it's our
cap.
asking price. Yeah,
It's our asking price. They don't care. And it's like, man, for the deal to come together, we got to do it this way, you know? So I'm super glad you say that.
Yeah, one thing I can comment on that too, and this is a misconception for newer buyers or less experience, is they wonder how in a major MSA can people afford to pay, you know, sub 7 caps, sub 6 caps, and these crazy cap rates. When you're competing against a lot of major MSA larger groups that raise money on a fund structure rather than a syndication, the benefit of a fund for an investor is their returns are blended among multiple properties in a fund. Now, also in the marketplace, when you're competing against funds, they can afford to buy at super compressed cap rates in certain markets because they don't need their cash on cash or preferred returns to be paid from that property. They're paying it out from multiple properties blended within a fund. So if they have some properties that are overperforming within this fund, they can afford to overpay for some of them as long as it plugs in with their existing management within that fund. Yeah.
Well, and also if a fund is, you know, depending on how capitalized they are, they can buy these cash.
Yep.
So they could buy a 4 cap cash, and they don't care because they're making a 4% yield. But they don't have to deal with going to a national lender and getting 7.5% debt. They buy these cash. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And that's what a lot of people don't realize.
Yeah, and an interesting thing, like if we look at, so my average traded cap rate over the last year, and again, like for everyone listening, cap rate is extremely irrelevant to me because it ignores leverage and debt terms and true cash returns. But like the average cap rate, it was like a 7.16% cap rate average for like the last 15 deals I've traded. And all of these deals were locked up during, 8% interest rates. So, you know, where a lot of people were saying like, hey, like average you're seeing Parks trade ads like 9 to 10% cap rates. I'm trading everything sub 8% cap rates for the most part, unless there's just issues with the deal or it's a tougher market. So,
and those deals that are trading in the 7 to 8s, and the operators are getting bank debt, right?
Yeah,
and they are. I'm assuming to make that yield, they're probably putting at least 35-40% down.
As long as there's a good roadmap for upside within the first year. So let's say something simple, baked in lot rents, like lot rents are $100 below market, or some type of like immediate 90-day value add, so to speak.
Yeah.
They're willing to put additional cash down just to get it financed across the board because they know they could recapture those returns relatively quickly.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So, I mean, basically these people they have different problems than I do, right? So it's and I'm looking for 30% equity to put into a deal, or 25%, because I really want to maximize, like if I'm raising investor capital for something, I really want to maximize that to its fullest potential.
Yeah.
And not get too deep and too cash heavy into each deal. Yeah. Because there could be other deals that pop up that we use a limited amount of capital for, that we need that to expand and buy more deals. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But if somebody is dead set on a deal and they're very well capitalized, they could put 40-50% down and buy a 7 cap deal, you know?
Yeah. And a mistake I feel like a lot of operators make is, when you're buying a park, especially like in your position, for example, you want to get the highest returns possible for your investors. You want to get the highest returns for yourself and the least amount of risk. But when you're looking at, hey, these parks you've bought over the last couple of years, when you're looking at your exit strategies down the road, you're optimizing for a different buyer type. Now you need to optimize for those syndicators, for those fund managers who aren't really concerned with day one returns, but there's a roadmap to get those returns over a 5 to 10 year hold period. Like right now, when interest rates got super volatile, like I'll just, like Brandon Turner with Open Door Capital, for example, like they were raising on 5-year timelines for their funds with complicated waterfall structures. They shifted most of their funds now to 70-30 flat over a 10-year hold, because they're like, hey, with the volatility in these interest markets, to be competitive in the marketplace, we need to look at longer timelines because the market's so competitive and debt's more expensive. So you see them still quote the same returns, but they stretched out how long those returns are going to be, because now they're less day one driven. They're more year 3, year 4, year 5, and so forth driven.
Yeah, they're looking for upside.
Yeah.
They're not looking for day one cash flow, which everybody has their own cup of tea, right?
Yeah.
Like I've done the fix and flip, the equity plays, like the short-term buy and holds. I totally get it.
Yeah.
I think this is just my personal belief. This is kind of why I named the podcast MHP CashFlow Podcast was I think cash flow is something that's not appreciated enough because it really solves a lot of problems. Solves a lot of business problems. Like if you have enough cash flow, you can budget in that monthly cash flow to reinvest back into the park. You know, it solves so many problems. I think it's super important. And I just obviously love the benefits of it, you know, because it reduces stress on my life, you know, and it allows me to go out there and maybe buy more deals, pay more people money. You know, I'm looking for these investors that I can pay a minimum 10 to 12% in the first year.
Yep.
You know, if I can do that, then I can raise the money like instantly.
Yeah.
You know?
And if I was going to the buy side myself and not focus on growing a brokerage team, I would be looking at higher cash flows. But what you have is, it's like, are you optimizing for placement of capital, aka raising a lot of funds and taking a percentage of the back end, or are you looking to partner and get solid cash flows day one? Personally, I'd be going to cash flow route too. It's just only because of the brokerage side. I'm trying to optimize for the highest paying buyer for my clients. But yeah, if I'm going to the buy side, I'm not looking at this whole like 5-year hold thing. I'm looking like, what's my cash flow day one?
Yeah, like I got to pay the bills next month. You know, I'm not worried about an equity play in 5 years. We'll split up the equity in 5 years, but we got to pay the bills next month, you know?
Yeah.
And you've probably come across a lot of different parks. In your opinion, what was the best cash flowing park that you've sold? Like where you looked at it and you're like, wow, this is a freaking grand slam deal. Like what was that deal like?
Yeah, so this is where it's complicated, because like the listed properties I have, I mean, we're getting crazy prices. So great returns day one. Like you didn't come to me to list to get great returns day one. But like a few off market transactions, like I've transacted deals that had 20% plus cash on cash in day one. Or deals that are essentially like quick flips, such mismanaged properties that you're doubling the equity of the property within the first year. And like you see that a lot of the times when there's a lot of vacant park on homes. There's, you know, not lagoons or treatment plants, but you got well and septic. You have these rougher markets. But like I'll give you an example, like a deal in South Carolina that I transacted before is about 25 sites. Like the lot rents of it were $150 a month. And there were like 10 vacant park on homes. So the operator on that one was able to buy it, just move lot rents, not even to market, but like 30% below market at $300 a month. And then they gave away a lot of the park on homes for free or as like fixer-upper specials. So they infilled 10 tenants like that, doubled lot rents, and then now the value of their property literally doubled in 6 months. So like as far as high returns, like you want to look for those upside type deals. But like if someone looked at the cap rate of that deal at acquisition, I mean, it was like a 3 cap. I mean, the guy's, honestly, if you underwrote real expenses, the guy's breaking even. There's zero cash flow. But you're able to double that value and get the cash flows up drastically. And so those are the things that, you know, if I was on the buy side, I'm looking for baked in equity appreciation day one, rents are below market, you know, the same exact things that you're looking for.
Yeah. Yeah. And
same exact thing as your Alabama property. I mean, the rents were crazy below what they should have been. You go in there day one, improve the property, get the rents. They're probably still a little bit below market. And like you did on, you talked about on our podcast, like you doubled the value of that property literally in like what, 6 months?
Oh man, that one was a home run deal. That one was such a good deal. And you know, I've with this deal, a lot of people, I've talked with a couple other operators. A lot of them don't love it. I love it because of the park-owned home situation. And that's a whole debate within itself, tenant-owned, park-owned home. But the thing is the lot rents on that deal, it is not high enough to justify putting everybody to tenant-owned. Because we have park-owned homes. I mean, we have 80 single wides that are renting for $1,200 a month. You can't beat that when it's $300 lot rents, right? So we came in there with hard money and bought the deal, bought it for 1.1. And I mean, we're refinancing right now with Vanderbilt. Probably going to close within the next couple of weeks because I'm at a year of seasoning now. And we got bank committee approval, like everything's good to go. And the appraisal came back at $2.15 million.
Yeah. No, it's crazy. And I know what you bought it for. It's like crazy returns. And what's an interesting thing is that if when I first got in the industry, park on homes, no go, private utilities, no go. I think what people are behind the eight ball on, and it's something you've recognized and was able to create a lot of value with it, is that infilling vacant lots now isn't what it was 5 years ago. 5 years ago, you could go to any home manufacturer, get 10 homes delivered, they'll finance it to you, super low interest rates, everything.
Yeah.
Now, it is very hard to find good used mobile homes, and buying new mobile homes, you're not going to get allocated a ton unless you're some crazy dealer who's been selling homes and has a great relationship with some manufacturers. So,
yeah.
Like park-owned homes is the way to go because you could quickly infill those park-owned homes and turn those homes over into paying tenants extremely quickly. And I feel like a lot of the buyer pool right now in the mobile home park space are severely undervaluing park-owned homes because they have this whole, we don't want repairs and maintenance and bad and older homes. But obviously don't buy a community with 1960s shit boxes that need to be demolished. But if you have a tired operator like the one that you bought that's got, solid structural park-owned homes, but she's too tired to go rehab them and get tenants in there, that's the easiest, quickest value add because you could turn that in 90 days.
There's value in park-owned homes. Like people don't want to admit that, but there absolutely is because it's not only producing higher revenue, but it's also a filled spot, right?
Yeah.
So it's like people put a lot of value on a vacant home that you can infill, but really the value is not necessarily there because if you have to put a $35,000-$50,000 mobile home there on site, but it only increases your lot value 30 to 40K, well, you're eating that until you sell. Like that's what people don't realize. And so I totally get I think it's really market specific with the park owned, tenant owned home situation. And it's really hard to justify a lot of the deals that I've looked at with tenant owned occupancy because it doesn't debt service. It's really hard to debt service with 7.5% debt if you're putting 25, 30% down when they're all tenant owned. But if you have, at least a mixture, right? 70% tenant owned, 30% park owned, because you got to get that rent roll up, right?
Yeah.
I've noticed that the park owned homes bring the rent roll up. And it might be a little bit higher of an expense ratio, but you're still servicing the debt. It still looks good to a lender, and you'll get the loan for it.
Yeah, and a lot of people don't realize like it's not necessarily a myth, but if you, like 3 years ago, lenders weren't financing park on home income, but it is relatively easy to find park on home debt now. Like national lenders like Vanderbilt do it all the time. So like this whole theory of like, this whole theory of a park's only worth what the lot rents bring in. It's like that's bullshit because just the shell value of a lot of these park on homes might be 20 to 30K a piece. Do you think this owner is just going to give away 500K worth of park on homes for free just because your bank won't finance it? It's like go call more lenders.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. There is value in it. And even on a deal that we were looking at, I mean, there was this 1998 Buccaneer 16 by 80 that I got on an email blast for $10,000, and I'm like, this is a cheap deal.
Yeah.
So
it's a 25K home all day.
25K. Yeah. I listed it on Facebook Marketplace for $20,000 with $5,000 down, $400 lot rent. And this is in Oxford, Alabama. $5K down, a $400 lot rent, $400 home rent, just principal only, no interest.
Yeah.
And dude, I got 72 messages in 48 hours. Like I had to turn the ad off because there were so many people reaching out. So it's like, so you can sell homes like that. I totally get that route. But also if you buy a $10,000 home, you got to pay $7,000 to move it in. You got to pay $3,000 to, set it up, tie down everything.
Yeah.
So you're going to be in 23, 24. into a $10,000 mobile home. But if you sell it and, you get that immediate capital up front, that's huge for an operator. But also a filled lot is adding 30 to 35K in value, right? Yeah. That's when it makes sense. But a vacant lot that you have to put a $50,000 brand new mobile home on, it's really hard for me to justify that. Like, I don't think a lot of people are doing infill right now. I may be wrong.
Perfectly to that point. Like, if I'm looking at, just because I'm on the brokerage side, but if I was going to buy side, I am not buying vacant lots. I'm buying vacant park-owned homes. Like, I want to park with vacant park-owned homes because it might cost $10K at the high end to rehab a rough park-owned home. Obviously, one that doesn't need to be demolished. But like you're mentioning, even if you can find the used homes, you're going to lose $15,000 between transportation, setup costs, whatever infrastructure bullshit you got to fix and hook up. So, like, vacant park-owned homes is the way to go if you're looking for immediate value add and immediate cash flow. Stay away from like these tenant-owned home parks where there's a bunch of vacant lots like that. It's too much. It's management intensive, cost intensive, capital intensive to infill vacant lots. When if you got park-owned homes on there, you could turn those immediately, sell them as fixer-uppers or fix them up yourself and sell them off like you're talking about. It's much easier to deal with a park-owned home park, which is kind of counterintuitive because park-owned home heavy parks should be management intensive, but you could just rent to own it to the tenants, and now you don't have the maintenance costs on that home anymore. So it's a very easy turnaround. If the market's going to make sense, obviously,
has to make sense. But there's also another aspect to it is having the control too, because a lot of people think that tenant-owned homes you have more control on because you're charging lot rent and you have limited expenses. But in reality, they can trash that home and it looks like crap, and you can't do anything about it. You just have to sit there and you have to collect lot rent, right? But if somebody trashes that home, you can serve them an eviction notice and they're out in 10 to 15 days in Alabama.
Yeah.
So it's like, because I talked with the seller originally on the first deal that I bought. She actually had the park as tenant-owned homes in the early 2000s. And I'm like, it's hard to finance. Why did you do it this way? Like, these are all park-owned homes, 33 park-owned homes. Why are you doing it this way? And she said it's because of the control factor. When she had them as all tenant-owned homes, she said the place, there's crackheads there. It was just a mess. Nobody took care of the homes, no pride in ownership, no nothing. So over the course of 10 to 15 years, the people left, they got out, and she started keeping the homes, remodeling them, and getting them rented out. Now the community looks amazing. Skirted, paved roads, like trees, great little looking community. And she was like, I would never go back to tenant-owned homes because the tenants just trash it. And that's actually true because we have 3 parks under contract right now. I actually just went under contract on another park I'll tell you about in a sec. Last night. And so we have one park that we are closing on in Wellington, Alabama, 17-lot deal. We're getting seller finance for $535,000, all park-owned homes. And that one's a great little deal.
Yeah.
And then we have another one in Kentucky, 25 units, all tenant-owned homes, few vacant lots and under market lot rents. So that one will be a good little value add play. But I will say the tenant-owned parks don't look the best.
Yeah.
But the park-owned home parks, at least from our experience, there's just a little bit more pride of ownership in them. Yep. And they usually are in pretty good condition. A lot of the tenant-owned homes are a little rougher. So the Kentucky park that we're buying is a little rougher, but has great upside. And then we went under contract on a 68-lot deal, all tenant-owned homes in Kokomo, Indiana, a couple weeks ago. And we're going to close on that in probably middle of December. And last night...
I think I know the Kokomo, Indiana park. I'm pretty sure I know. Yeah.
It's on a wastewater.
Yeah. I think I know the seller of that. Yeah.
Yep. I know a couple of the people that offered on the deal too. A couple other bigger operators offered on it, but he was in our database for months, and I built really, really good rapport with him. And he's a great guy. Me and him talk all the time, but it's a great little deal. We're buying it for 1.49. yeah, there's some upside. There's lower lot rents. It's a good deal overall. So we're really excited about that one. But just last night, went under contract on 31 park-owned homes in Birmingham for $800,000. Wow. So very excited about that one. But you know, it just goes to show that like you can make any deal work. The numbers have to be there. But, you know, just for what I'm looking for right now, I am looking for parks that cash flow from day one. If they cash flow from day one with a little bit of upside, that's all I need. I'm not looking for a giant 90 pad infill project or anything like that, you know? Yeah. And I'm assuming that's what buyers are looking for right now, right? Like, what's been your experience with that?
Yeah, I mean, every buyer's looking for day one cash flow, but I will say we're kind of on opposite ends of the thing because I'm usually representing sellers to try and get them that ridiculous number. So,
the more money.
So, a little counterintuitive to what you're hunting for out there, which makes sense. But like day one cash flow is important, but like, you know, the hardest challenge I think most people run into is just not understanding like their debt component. So know, hey, I know I can get the park finance at this through my lenders, or you have your private money lenders that'll finance you at X amount %. I think a lot of the buyers where they make mistake is they're thinking of debt terms years ago, or they don't understand like, hey, you can go to Vanderbilt Mortgage and get these park-owned homes financed at 8.5%. Like, it's not like you're going some crazy 10% interest rate. Like, they're very favorable debt terms. So I think like understanding the debt component, because it's really hard to predict cash flow if you can't predict debt. Yeah,
really hard. Because I'm looking at it like first thing I look at when I'm looking at a deal is, okay, we're going to have to put 25 to 30% down. You know, what does that look like? Because that 25 to 30% down, I'm going to have to hit a minimum of 10% yield for that capital, for that money, year one, just to get the funding. Yeah. So I'm like, okay, that's the first metric. Then the second metric is 70% or 75% bank debt. It's probably going to be 7.5 to 8.5% right now. Regardless, and I haven't seen a major shift. A lot of people told me this, and this is what pissed me off. A lot of people said, "Oh, you're going to get such better debt terms if they're all tenant-owned homes." That is a bunch of crap. It's not true. That is a bunch of crap. I thought I was going to be looking at like 200 basis points, 300 basis points difference. It's maybe like 25 basis points. Like
and like a lot of people, when people are giving advice for like, hey, you want to be looking at majority tenant-owned parks and like the better debt terms, like they don't realize like that's because the buyers you're listening, or like the people teaching you, they're doing larger parks where they're getting agency type debt. So if you want to get agency debt for a 100 unit plus community, yes, it needs to be 75% tenant owned. Yes, it needs to be city utilities. But like when you're hunting for strong cash flow deals in the 30 unit, 60 unit, 20 unit, all in that range, it's whatever the bank's willing to do. And the bank doesn't care if it's park owned or tenant owned. The bank's looking at it like, do you have good P&Ls? Is there money coming in? They're not going to just give you some 10% interest rate because, there's 7 park owned homes. Like,
no. I mean, literally with Vanderbilt, I think we're at 7.95 right now on a 30-year AM, which is incredible debt terms. Like for a park
30-year AM, awesome. Yeah, 30-year AM,
7.95. Unbelievable. I was stoked with it. And our 25 unit that we have in Kentucky, which is all tenant owned, 0 park owned. I mean, a couple RTOs with balances, but all tenant owned home. We're getting bank debt, local bank debt at 7.5%. And so it's like that difference in 0.5% of debt service. I mean, you're talking a couple $100 a month. But again, if that deal was all 25 park owned homes renting for $700-800 a month, and if they're in good condition, like I'm buying that deal 7 days a week and twice on Sunday. You know what I mean? Yeah. Because you can justify it. But with 40 basis points in debt, it's not enough to justify only focusing on tenant owned. But if it's an agency deal and I can get 4% debt on it, now we're talking.
Different game.
Now we're talking, then I will do that. But it's just, it's just such a, I hate that so many people have said that in the industry. is the big discrepancy between tenant owned and park owned. I think people can get burned with park owned. Don't get me wrong. Like you have to be careful because you're liable for the trailer, for the mobile, you know? So you have to do certain things, but I hate the cookie cutter advice that is just passed around in the industry. I think you can make any deal work with the right terms and with the right setup and structure.
Yeah, and that's like something that I guess a lot of people don't understand. Like the whole point of buying real estate is the value add and how can you increase the equity and value of that property, right?
Yeah.
If something is majority occupied, 100% tenant owned, on city utilities, billed direct to the tenants, there's no value add. So
zero.
Unless you're buying super compressed cap rates, that's not what you're buying. So a lot of people don't understand, like especially new people into space. It's like, hey, I want to buy a deal at a 10 cap that I could double the value in 2 years. It's like, well, you're not buying tenant owned on city utilities then. You're buying, master metered with a bunch of down vacant parking homes because the value add is where you make money, not the stabilized, let me just park money there and wait.
Exactly. Or it's a 1031 play.
Yeah.
It's and it's hard to justify those deals too, because those people will buy once you're in that timeline, and it's a stressful timeline, dude, they'll buy anything.
Yeah.
Anything. Like they need to place the money or they're paying 25% in capital gains tax. It's like they'll buy a crappy deal, they'll buy a good deal. It doesn't matter. They'll do anything.
Yeah.
So talk to me about what deals you got going on right now. What do you got in the pipeline? What are you selling? What are you planning on selling? What are you looking at?
Man, I have a little bit of everything.
Yeah.
So the one thing that's been interesting and unique with because I used to be cold calling based like most brokers, and like I still have cold callers that are building the database, but since I do a lot of like text blasts, email blasts, and online funnel marketing, I'm like, whoever comes through the database wants an evaluation, we evaluate it, we're within realistic pricing, and I think I can help them. Like we're taking listings for whatever comes in. So like I have as small as a 10-unit park in Iowa to a 120 park in, like, let's say Airbase, being 60, 70 sites to 110 sites in North Dakota. Like I'm a little bit all over the place. If anyone wants to get on my deal blast list, by the way, if you go to my mhpvalue.com/buyers, I can get you on my off-market blast list. Just self-plug in there. But
yes, we'll put that in the show notes.
Yeah. Honestly, man, my goal is just to try and help sellers maximize their value on an exit. So, I take listings wherever they are because I have a very like systematic marketing approach. It's not very dependent on some brokers having like, hey, they have a stronghold in North Carolina, so they're just going to take North Carolina listings. West Coast, I don't really have much traction or ever put any time to, but from Colorado to the East Coast, anything in there, I can move at pretty crazy prices.
You'll do You'll do any deal, any park, basically.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
That makes sense. Now, one thing I wanted to add just before we change topics from the debt terms and underwriting of parks.
Yeah,
like an important thing that I think would be very helpful for people, and it's something that I didn't systematically know at first, but underwriting is a 3-stage process. First part of underwriting is determining operations of a park. That's an easy one. What's it going to cost? What's the income? What's actually being collected? What's the true NOI? Not the NOI the seller tells you, but the true NOI. But then stage 2 is, determining what are your debt costs. And that was a lot of what we just talked about. A rule of thumb that people don't understand with bank debt and debt interest rates is the bank tries to make a spread on where they could sell their debt to the open market. I'm not a Mr. Finance debt expert, but basically, if you look at the 5-year or the 10-year treasury rates that you could just Google, bank debt terms usually follow a spread between what they'll offer you and those treasury rates. So like a good rule of thumb, if someone's looking at what to predict like their interest rates are going to be with a bank for the sake of underwriting, usually 350 to 450 basis points above the 5-year treasury rate is where debt's going to land. So let's use an example. The 5-year treasury rate right now is 3.8%. You just locked in debt at 7.9. That's about 400 basis points above where the 5-year treasury rate is.
Yeah.
So like for anyone listening, if you're like, hey, I don't understand bank debt, first thing is just reach out to mortgage brokers. They'll just tell you. It's like, hey, this is what we're locking in this month. Easy. But if you don't know, look at the 5-year treasury rate. it's probably going to be 350 to 450 basis points above that. That's your interest rate. Now, most lenders, 70% LTV is standard. Maybe you get to 75. Maybe they only do 65, but around 70% LTV, just like you're mentioning. And then amortization, usually it's 20 to 25-year amortization. You getting 30-year am with Vanderbilt, rock on, baby.
Yes.
But, yeah, 20 to 25-year amortization. So when you guys are underwriting parks, determine the operations of the park, just so you know what the NOI is. What are your returns based off bank debt or just debt terms? So get to your debt service coverage ratio. If you can't cover debt service, you can't buy the park. Simple as that.
100%.
And then once you have stage 1 and stage 2 done, now stage 3 is adjust pricing to get the returns you need.
Yeah. So exactly. And that's standard. That's so important too. I'm really glad you say that, because I get a lot of questions from newer guys that are like, "Hey, I'm looking at this park, how do you underwrite it?" I'm like, well, first of all, you got to know what the bank debt is. And I've even talked with sellers. They think you can get 5% debt right now. Yeah. On a 25 unit community from a local bank. It's like that's non-existent. That is not, it's not reality, Yeah. And you're exactly right. Majority of the banks are 20-year. It is pulling teeth to try to get 25 with some of them. Vanderbilt's a different story, because they're a very well-respected, well-known national lender. They've been doing this for a while. They're fine with doing 30, because they take, a lien on the homes, and there's different risk factors that they can mitigate to get to that 30-year. But most of these banks are 20 years. Especially in the Southeast, just from what I've been seeing. You get a lot of national guys that are at 25. But yeah, the spread, I've seen 2, even on our deals, I've seen 2 term sheets from lenders in the last 2 weeks. They have both been at 375. Above the 5-year. Yeah. And I think that's just accurate right now. I think that's just really, really accurate with what people can look at for debt. But another thing that I've had problems with is sponsorship experience, years of experience, because they're like, "Hey, what's your track record?" And I show the last 6 years on the brokering side doing all these fix and flips. They don't care about that. They want to see what you've owned as far as mobile home parks. And so I've had to bring in on these deals, a couple debt partners or balance sheet partners with better track record and experience to help secure that financing, right? Yeah. Now, that won't be the problem in 12 months from now, after all the deals that we do. But right now it's a problem because we need to add more to the balance sheet, So that's super, super important for people out there to realize, is that you have to properly underwrite it, and you got to poke holes in these deals. That's what I do. I immediately try to find why I should not buy this deal. Like, I'm skeptical of everything, and if I'm poking enough holes in the deal, and this has helped me in the single family space too, if I'm poking enough holes into the deal and I get to the last couple items and I'm like, there's not much wrong with this, that's when it's like, okay, now I got a deal. Yeah. But you can look at red flags from day one and immediately take a deal out of the queue, because you're like, oh, I don't like this about it. This is a big problem. Oh, this is 2 hours from a major MSA with 1,500 people. No, thanks. I'll go on to the next one. But you start to poke holes, and it's super, super helpful. And so, I love that you brought that up.
Yeah. Yeah. Like so many new people, they just don't understand, like, hey, how do I know this deal pencils? It's like you're mentioning, like in stage 1, determine true operations and where rents could go. Like, there's a lot of hole poking in there before you even worry about debt terms. It's like, well, sure, the seller's expenses are 20%. And we haven't had to do repairs on any of these homes or any sewer issues in the last 10 years. It's like, well, you better underwrite some CapEx or additional expenses there. So stage 1 theoretically is like its own system and process almost. And
so I got to ask you this. So you've probably been asked this before. You come across so many parks, right? When are you going to start thinking about buying some of these? Because I know you've probably seen some deals where you're like, dude, this is a deal. Like, I should buy this. When are you going to start doing that?
So there's been a few deals that I've thought, man, maybe I should have pulled the trigger on buying it. But like I think for everyone's situation, they need to optimize. Like they have to figure out what are they optimizing for. So like my systems and back end processes are optimized for scaling a brokerage team right now.
Yeah.
If I look at, let's say the return of $50,000, if I had $50,000 to throw at something, whether it was throwing it into partnering on a deal or hiring out more employees, like at this point, I've built the systems and processes that, I mean, let's say the 2 guys that I brought on recently, I probably spent like money wise, 10 grand on each for like just additional accounts and research tools to plug them in my systems. But just from the 2 guys that I've scaled up now on the brokerage side, we're bringing in close to $300K in gross commissions just in the last, like closing this month. And they've only been in the industry now less than 6 months. So
my ROI.
Yeah, my return on 10 grand in business is a little bit higher than I'd get from parks. Now, if I need to allocate $200,000, $300,000 of resources to something to where my money's going to grow, it's a different story. But again, I'd be optimizing for something different. Now, if I came across, the right deal, I would do that. But like in the brokerage game, it's so low technical right now because most people, they just cold call, broker some deals, build up some money, go buy side. No one's actually building out a proper deal sourcing, deal disposition system. Once the system's built, this is the first year I got it to the point where it's really kind of like a plug and play system. To an extent, I'm still building my stats and real metrics because like we have long transaction timelines, so it's hard to predict, but I'm about a year and a quarter, year and a half into having the system built out. And like for every dollar I put into marketing spend or additional people to plug my system in, I'm probably gonna get a higher return than majority of the deals out there to buy. Now, if there's some screaming deals, let's say like the Alabama one, you're able to find and get done. All right, that's something that you make $1 million in like a year and a half. I'm going buy side, but right now, definitely. But right now, there's so much money in the brokerage game because so many people do not know what they're doing. And the mobile home park space is rapidly growing. Like the competition's just getting harder and harder every day, and prices are going up and up and up. But on the flip side, there's still so many operators and deals out there that, for example, like on how big the mobile home park space is, you found a niche of operations that other operators that are been in the industry for 10 years still don't understand. Like the idea of buying, like specifically hunting park and home communities is like a new thing. Like, so
it's a new thing.
So like that, so that's where it's interesting. Just there's so much on the brokerage side, like being able to nitpick and find these little ways to add value. There's so much opportunity to just get deals done, even on the brokerage side, that I think, like if I were to go to buy side, it'll be a much easier buy side proposition if I'm making $700K a year in active income versus, trying to buy and having to give away so much equity because you're syndicating and stuff.
So you're thinking about using your own money for deals, basically.
You
don't want to do that yet.
Yeah, so like the idea of like recourse being an issue, I'm like, I'll put it this way. If I tried to buy a deal right now and I didn't have $500K to throw at it and I got to go raise money, well, now I'm giving up, percentage of the GP, or if I'm not doing that much of a split, I'm just giving away majority of the equity of that deal and just trying to capture the upside. It's a much easier proposition to go start buying parks if you just got $500K sitting. So my theory is try and build up a lot more stacked cash, keep putting all my money into this marketing system, get it to a point where it's generating multi-millions a year in brokerage fees, and then going to the buy side at that point. I'll have a lot more capital to try and take things down. I don't have to be spreading myself thin on equity to try and raise money.
You want to keep the majority of the pie is what you're saying when you do go to buy a deal, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So like I have a theory that, so I got 2 friends that are actually known syndicators now in the space, also young guys just like me. We're basically at the same point. 2 younger guys, like they're 2 guys. I'm a younger guy, both making low 6 figures, couple $100,000, $300,000 a year. It's going good and everything. They're going to the buy side now. I'm still in the brokerage trying to stack. We're having a little internal competition. They're doing the, GP, LP, fancy syndication, raising kind of institutional style money. Now they're going to get 20 to 30% of the back end of these larger deals. So let's say they're doing, a $3 million deal now that'll be worth $5 or $6 million. They capture $1 million after 5 years, and then now they could go buy parks without having to raise a ton of money and give away so much equity. I'm like doing let's stack a bunch of cash, get a really good cash flowing brokerage team, and then go to buy side. We're going to see who has more money in 10 years. That's it's like we're having like an internal competition, because I think you don't need to, just because you could buy real estate with none of your own money doesn't mean you need to. Exactly. And I think a lot of people forget about that.
You got to be very careful with it, because I almost feel like I'm buying better deals focusing on other people's money. With my own money, I'll buy a risky deal if it's in a great deal with great upside. Like, I bought so many risky single-family fix and flips that I made great money on. I mean, like flips where we would clear $100,000 checks every single time. Yeah. Like month after month after month. But some of those were risky. I would not risk other people's money doing that.
Yeah,
and that's another level. It's another level of care that you have to put into it, because you're responsible for not only your money, but somebody else's money. So,
and another thing too, like think about how many years, all right, mobile home park space you found a niche in there that's extremely profitable in the last few years. But think about how many years you've been doing deals, making money, and the flow of money in real estate. Like, I think a lot of new people in the mobile home park space, or just any industry of real estate, like, what they forget about is, like, if I think about even myself, I am so much more equipped to pick out a really good deal and understand the returns of a park now than I was 3 years ago. So yes, could I have went the buy route now? Even I will be in a much better place to pick better deals, to have better resources later on, in addition to just stacking cash, because I'm in a little bit of a niche with this marketing system. But like a lot of people make the mistake of like wanting to buy like a mobile home park with no money down or minimal money down. Like, you're raising money because you know how the deal is going to work, and you can make a lot of money for your investors. But someone who's new in the industry, they should just start brokering and doing deals. Or I'm not a huge fan of the wholesaling game, but they should start wholesaling deals even, and just start middlemaning deals, because once you understand the flow of money and the way the transactions work, you're much more well equipped to go buy. And by the time you know how transactions work, you will have money. Like, I like to spend money and have a lot of fun. But if I just stacked all my cash I ever made in the industry, I'd have well over $1 million already, just ready to pull trigger. But I like to spend money and have fun. So
yes, that piece of advice is gold for people out there. And I need to hear that like constantly, because I get really focused on the passive income, cash flow side of things. But a mentor of mine told me this years ago. Active income is a faucet that you always have to keep on, no matter what. Like, no matter what, if you're buying deals for cash flow, you still have to have your active income up. Like, it should never turn off. So I'm of the page of doing that. I totally agree with that, But I do think this is just my personal opinion. I think you'll look at a couple deals and you'll be like, man, I should have bought these in 2 to 3 years from now.
There is two that I actually put in offers myself at one point, or I was doing an off-market deal and I was like, I should take equity on this or something instead of a fee. Two times that's happened, and it was ones that were like one of them was in Kansas. I still want to figure out who was the guy who ended up buying it for me, but one of them was a seller finance deal on the outskirts of Kansas City. It was like a 30-unit deal, but all 2000s and newer homes. It was a mix of tenant-owned and park-owned, direct build utilities, but this guy still had $230 a month lot rents in a $450 market. And he was going to seller finance it with less than 10. Yeah, seller finance with less than 10% down, 4% interest only for 5 years. Now,
wow,
that was one I was like, because at the time I just it was only I think like $500K at the time, and I'm like, I had more than enough money to take it down myself, but I'm like, I'm living in New York City, blowing a lot of money doing stupid shit, but I should have bought that one. But aside, there's been a few, but I will eventually. But like right now, especially over this last 6 months, dude, the amount of money that was generated from minimal investment into an extra body in my sales system, like it's like an extra. and they're like, I'll give you an example. Like Nathan and Josh on my team, absolute killers, really great guys. Like Nathan's not even 21 years old, lives at his parents' house, never worked a day in real estate. This month, he's having over $60,000 for his cut of commissions coming in, like net. And that's his portion after, because obviously he doesn't know a lot of the transactions, so we have to split it up. And like when I'm jumping in to help with contract and stuff, but like, imagine you were 19 years old living at home, and you made $60K in 1 month. It's crazy. So that's where I'm like, all right, there's a lot of money to be made in brokerage.
That's life-changing money. You know, I mean, as a 19-year-old kid, that's unbelievable. You know, so that's good. So you're basically, so talk to me about what you're wanting to do. What does your next 12 to 24 months look like? What are you trying to do? Where are you headed? What's kind of the game plan for MHP Value?
Yeah, so by Q1, I'm looking to have 5 guys under me. So like the way I'm structuring this, I have a theory that brokerage can be an actual sellable company rather than, you know, just a bunch of glorified cold callers that you just take a cut from. Only because I do like a marketing system, but basically Nathan and Josh were the first 2 guys that I brought in, and I want them to be kind of in charge of their territories, doing the evaluation pitch, doing the hard things about, you know, basically being a senior agent that controls their territory, is the go-to guy for their territory. So Josh is in the Southeast, Nathan's in the Midwest. It just worked out that way because I have a lot of deals in there, and they actually came to me through my vlogs that I post, which was kind of interesting.
Really?
Yeah. So it's not like I was trying to hire people. They asked me like, hey, I really want to get in the game. And they were pinging me. Like I have DMs from both of them from like 6 months ago. So it's kind of awesome that they both making really good money now. But all right, them 2, that was my first test. It's working out. Now I'm going to try by Q1 to get the 5 people. So I have a Midwest guy, Southeast guy, Northeast, South, and a West Coast guy. Once I get to those 5 people, maybe 6 to 8 months for them to be just, you know, trained enough to be able to sustain more deal flow. And then from there, I'm going to plug in VA cold callers under them just to generate a ton of leads, and probably junior agents that are more in the lead gen side of things. So that way it's like I have every region covered with a senior agent, so to speak, multiple people generating leads under them. And then once we have the entire U.S. kind of covered and just taking over just a good amount of market share, I don't know, maybe see it like either exit opportunities to another brokerage team, because I'm building it systemized to where it's actual plug and play marketing systems, not reliant on one person cold calling and like one person's relationships. But then also, even if it's not a sellable thing, by then, at least the way it's trending, the commissions coming in should be well more than enough to be better equipped for buy side. So that's my 12-month to 2-year plan, I'd say.
That's huge. I think brokerage is a sellable asset. I mean, just in Phoenix, about a month ago, Compass just bought a large independent brokerage here in Phoenix. I think it's called North & Co., something like that. It's kind of a boutique luxury, but they just bought it. So it is a sellable asset, you know, and there's big brokers buying small boutiques all the time. So if you create a profitable small boutique, you can absolutely sell that to one of the big 5 brokers.
That's what I'm hoping for. And like commercial real estate, the dispo part is the hardest to scale, because in residential, obviously you just have, if there's good systems generating leads, it goes to the MLS, deals get sold. Commercial is not that easy, but I think I have the dispo process 80% figured out, because right now it's literally without knowing anything, you could just, once you get the marketing blast set up, it's a system where it's like it goes out, they get hit with follow-ups, the leads get generated, they get hit with more follow-ups, offers start to come in. You need knowledge to present the offers to the sellers and do the negotiations part, so that's what the senior agent of that area should be. But lead gen on the front end, finding deals and finding listings, and then the dispo of it, like I have that like 85% systemized where it's literally plug and play. We don't have to think much about it. So that's what I'm thinking. It's going to be sellable one day. Yeah.
I think it's going to be sellable. I mean, I mean, even on, you know, buy, sell or buy, biz, sell, I mean, there's tons of brokerages out there, you know? Yeah. So that's awesome, man. And so with Other Street Advisors, so you have your own team under Other Street. Is that how it's structured?
Yeah. So the one benefit Other Street Advisors works is I have a good relationship with Enon Winkler, who owns it. He coached me in the business, so sense of loyalty there. other thing too, I'm working on trying to figure out how to separate this and get my own person for this. But we do have a really kick-ass back office team at Other Street and a really kick-ass underwriter. Now, like, we still underwrite most of the properties ourselves, but you know when you just get a messy rent roll, a messy P&L, and you have to spend hours just going through it to plug it into your model?
Yeah.
Our underwriter, Christian, is like, I mean, if I send him financials, it'll take me an hour and a half, 2 hours to go through it, start to plug it in. He just like, Armand, it's ready in 10 minutes. And I'm like, oh man, you're worth 30% of a commission any day. You know what I mean?
That's amazing.
So,
that's amazing.
Yeah.
Love that. So, how many deals have you done this year so far? Closed deals.
Yeah, actually, I can give you an exact number. Let's see. Let me see if I can pull this up quick. 30 seconds. Internet's, of course, slow because we're streaming. I'll give you an exact number. I actually haven't done an exact count. Standby, coming up now. Yeah, so I'll give you exact counts. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 deals closed this year with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 under contract, and then 4 pending contracts right now as we speak.
Nice. That's a full pipeline. 9 in escrow.
Yeah, and that's like money in the door, deposits hard, and then if we look at deals marketing, listings, there's 11 active listings right now. And keep in mind, we're a 3-man team. Yeah. And then the 2 guys really just started 6 months ago. So like they're just starting to see success. But yeah, the pipeline's full. Like the internet marketing stuff is interesting because historically, when you look at inputs of outputs of lead generation, when you're cold calling, it's a 1-to-1 ratio, AKA you make 1 cold call, you generate 1 lead if you find the person.
Yeah.
With the internet marketing, once you build up the data, you could send things out in a 1-to-many ratio, kind of like an email blast. You type 1 email and it goes out to people. But the problem is that's not that effective as far as follow-up. Once you're funneling to an exact call to action, like in my case, a free evaluation at MHP value, all of these 1-to-many marketing channels, for 1 unit of output, I'm getting 10, 100, just X amount of inputs from it. So it's scaled up pretty rapidly. Like right now I'm in a phase where I'm trying to figure out how to either stop working on not the most stellar listings or figure out a way to hand that off or refer it to a different brokerage, because I have too many leads right now. I haven't even been able to, like, I had to shut off the marketing follow-ups because I'm like, all right, guys, we got to worry about selling what we have now.
and that's how you're sourcing the majority of your deals, is literally organic reach outs through the website, or is it cold call, or how are you sourcing the majority of your deals? Yeah, so all of the data is still generated from cold calls, because there is no good data list you will find out there. There's no like, hey, just go buy this list and it's going to be accurate at all. The mobile home park space is just hard. It's not like multifamily where you go on CoStar and it's like 80% correct. So the base level data is still generated from cold calls, and then that also just generates leads. As we're cold calling around listings, cold calling around areas, you're going to get deals. You should get enough deals to where you have a full pipeline just from cold calling. But once someone is in our database, and you probably see it too, I send out a mix of sellers blasts, buyers blasts, podcasts, vlogs. Now the podcasts and vlogs don't do much, but it puts a face to the name of these emails that you see. So something that's been interesting is like podcasts that I've done. People mention like, oh, the reason why I reached out for an evaluation was because I saw you interview this guy, and I'm a huge fan of his parks or something like that. And I'm like, it creates a lot of the credibility behind a lot of the internet blasts, because you need some type of face, name, brand behind it. But most of it is generated from cold calling to build the data. But the lead generation bulk of it is emails and text blasts to the free offer of an evaluation. Yep. That's the call to action. That's a call to action. And it's just as many different marketing channels to that call to action I can make. And right now it's just emails and text blasts. Like it's too much to handle. I'm like, I got to chill out on the, like I haven't, that's like you probably know, I haven't sent out
I haven't sent out like an evaluation kind of here, sell your park with me email blast in a while. Cause I'm like,
Yeah.
from the buyer's blast and just the podcast, too many people are coming in. I'm like, I don't even have enough time to underwrite it. So like,
Yeah.
no.
No, I'm on it. I see all of them. They look good. Yeah. I love the deal flow, when they come out, you know, cause it's just, you put it very basic and it's very easy to digest, you know, cause you see a lot of these emails. It's super complicated. There's numbers all over the place. It's like very, very confusing. So you do what I like what you do is you do a good job of like, you know, eliminating the friction in a deal. Yeah. So I really like that. Yeah.
Yeah. I try and make it to where like if someone looks at the email, like I want it to be enough info they could underwrite it and give me at least a general answer on it right away. And then the other benefit too, through the system, like if you open the email, you're going to get hit with the follow-ups if we don't have enough interest on it. So
that's awesome. Yeah. Well, I love it, man. Well, cool, dude. Yeah. We're just a little over an hour. Do you want to wrap up, or do you want to go over any other topics before we wrap up, or what do you want to do?
Yeah. One quick topic, just to leave everyone listening with helpful advice. When you're talking with a broker, how do you negotiate or make offers through a broker to actually find deals? Because obviously brokers ask for ridiculous numbers. That's the whole point. You list the park to try and get more than it's worth.
Yep.
Most brokers know when they list the park, it's overvalued, because you're not going to ask for what it's worth. You're going to ask for more than it's worth. A lot of people do make the mistake of just asking straight up, hey, will the seller finance the park? Obviously, everyone wants to buy a 5% down, 2% interest rate, interest only seller financing deal.
Yeah,
obvious. What they should be asking is qualifying questions to the broker. What's the seller's reason for selling? Are they looking to retire, or are they just done with their investment cycle? Do they have debt on the property? And then what's the value add component of the property? If you know those three answers, you don't need to ask if someone's willing to seller finance. No one wants to seller finance. Usually you have to negotiate that in. But if you're trying to just negotiate that in without actually understanding the seller's constraints, you're going to get no traction. So like just spam asking a bunch of brokers, will they seller finance? Will they seller finance? Total waste of time. The broker's probably going to write you off and say, this guy's unqualified, can't buy through a bank. Nix. Yeah. So like that, like first thing is like if they're going through brokers, ask for that. Second thing is like if you ask a broker what's the interest on a deal been like, have they received a lot of offers, or why is it sitting on market for more than, let's say, 60 days? Then, you know, just offer something in writing at any price you want, because a lot of the times me as the broker, like if you give me an offer, even if it's a lowball offer, but it's in writing and it's been sitting for 60 days, that will help me go back to the seller and bring their expectations down. I'll say, hey, listen, it's been 60 days. Yeah. We're getting less clicks on the email blast. We're not getting as much interest. I did get this offer in writing. It's lower than you think, but it could start the conversation. A lot of people just write deals off as overpriced without submitting something in writing.
Yes.
And then I never know to come back to them now when the seller does come down at expectations. So submitting offers in writing is important, but be smart about it. Don't just submit a 5% interest only seller financing offer on a deal that was just listed in a major MSA. Now you just look like an idiot. But if there's a deal that's been sitting for 60, 90 days on market, you talk with the broker, explain, one, it just shows you're a real person, but you talk with the broker and ask, you know, qualifying questions. How long is it been? Why is it sitting on market? Is it a pricing component? What's wrong with the park on homes? You know, something qualifying to show you're actually interested in the deal. You'll have a way better time negotiating offers with the broker, because the broker wants to get the deal done. We only get paid if we close deals. So if I'm having a tough time to sell this property and the seller has these pain points, I will tell you if it hasn't been moving.
Yeah. 100%.
So that's
so good.
That's like an
that's
important
so
thing.
good, because a lot of people don't recognize that brokers don't get paid. They don't get paid for having an active listing. They paid for getting it sold. Yeah. Right. And even on the brokering side back in the day, I didn't want to have an active listing. I wanted a pending listing.
Yeah, I want pending listings. I want things closing. I don't want this shit sitting on Crexy. Like
exactly. You don't want it on Crexy. And so and I love that you said that about just submitting the offer, because I even see a bunch of deals where I'm like, yeah, I could submit something, but they're probably not going to accept it. So why even bother, you know? But if somebody's asking you, hey, what's the activity level like on this? That means that they want to buy it, but they want to buy it at a cheaper price, you know? And so it's like, just submit the offer. Just submit the offer. And if they respond and, you know, looking for a counter or something like that, then you're in the ballpark. Now you're in talks with them. Yeah. Right. But if you don't even submit the offer, you're shooting yourself in the foot. Right.
Yeah, and a big question people could do just to like not waste their time submitting so many LOIs is call the broker or email him, whatever, and ask like, hey, is it worth submitting this in writing? And just literally submit what, like, because I will tell them, like, let's say my seller is stuck. We have a park listed for $2 million. I know that their bottom number is 1.8. I'm not going to tell the person that because I'm trying to negotiate the best offer for my seller. But if you come to me and you're like, hey, is it worth submitting something in writing around 1.8? Then I will tell you, like, put it in writing. Let me see what the seller comes back with, and we'll start the negotiation from there. But if I never get anything in writing, I have nothing to go negotiate on.
Yeah, you got nothing to negotiate on, you know? And it's like, and you're mainly worried about price, right? Like, you want to get them the highest price possible for the most part, right? Or are you looking for the best terms for them?
You know, I would always say it's best terms first, then price. Like, I would advise my seller, let's say they want $2 million. I know it's not going to cover debt service, but someone could come in with a lot more cash, but it's unlikely. If it's been sitting for 6 months and I know the seller, you know, let's say it's a $2 million property, they only have $500K in debt that they have to pay off, and, you know, their financials aren't optimized, but someone could go in there and seller finance for just 2 years and refinance it. Like, there's a deal right now I'm under contract in Merritt Island, Florida. Straight up told the guy, I'm like, listen, I know we want $80K a site. We aren't going to hit that because your rents are too low. Let's put it out there for cash. But if someone's coming in who's qualified that wants seller financing, you know, if they could balloon you out in a year and a half, is that something you'd consider? Like, I'll advise them, like, hey, you should seller finance this in the event. But I can't go and negotiate that seller financing and tell them, hey, this is what the buyer pool is thinking if I don't get that in writing. So if you get it to me in writing, or at least something on an email, something I could be like, hey, seller, look at this. This is their constraints. Here's what I think we should do to come back at it. That'll move it along to further the line than just not offering at all.
Yeah, you got to put it in writing, and you got to, because like what I'm looking for, if I'm submitting an offer on a deal, is I want to get a counter from the seller. Like, I don't necessarily need them to accept my initial LOI. I mean, if they do, then great. But like, I'm looking for a counter. You know, that's what I'm looking for when I'm submitting an offer. So it's like, you know, I've won on deals when I get a counter from the seller, you know, because now now he's thinking about selling it, and it's kind of getting the emotions high, and that's when a deal can strike. One last thing. So are you open when somebody, because I've seen this happen recently, when somebody offers on a deal, right, and they're coming in with bank debt, do the majority of the sellers that you're talking with, are they under the impression that it's okay to carry a portion of the equity? Like, is that ever a conversation? Like, do buyers ever submit an offer and come in with a bank debt at 60%? They want the seller to carry 30, and they bring in 10 cash. How often does that happen?
Yeah, very often. I think why you don't see that happen as often as it could is because most brokers don't underwrite to the levels to where they can explain that good. And then also you have to understand just like the seller's recourse. So if it's, you know, like I'm actually going through that on multiple different deals now, but one that's in Ohio, for example, without trying to give too much info, because we're still in negotiations.
You can just do basic.
Yeah,
info.
basic. Let's say it's a $1.5 million property. The deal pencils to 1.2, but there's a lot of really valuable park on homes that's worth about $300,000. Like, we're doing bank debt and mix of bank debt cash for the 1.2 million. Seller's going to carry $300,000 for a 2-year note, interest only, to help bridge the gap there, because it won't finance at the 1.5 through a bank, or it'll just be too much cash out of pocket. So that is an extremely good tactic. The problem is, though, when most brokers don't understand that really and how to explain it to their sellers. Like, I can explain it to my sellers, like, hey, I modeled this out. Here's my original underwriting. With the bank debt terms today, we're really, like, debt service coverage, 70% LTV. We're really going to get at most maybe 1.2 if this is cash. There's high enough cash flow that justifies your 1.5 price, but we got to do something creative in there to try and bridge that gap. And that's where we come up with the 300K seller carry on these park-owned homes.
Yeah.
So that's something I can explain to the sellers. And then most sellers shut that down because they have no recourse in second position. But this is where you do something like, hey, maybe there's no recourse if it's in second position to the note for the park, but what if we put collateral of park-owned homes on there? What if the buyer personally guarantees that small note? Like, there's a lot of workarounds that a lot of uneducated brokers don't understand.
I've heard that so
happens
many
a lot.
times.
Yeah.
I have heard that multiple times. The seller's in second position. They're never going to accept that. It's like, but that's an objection. I mean, there's 3 or 4 things that you can do to offset that risk for the seller. But you're also getting, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, you're also getting $1.2 million down day one, right? Yeah. So it's like, if you have to carry 300,000, I'm sorry, but that's the risk versus the reward that you get for getting $1.2 million today. Yeah. Like,
and even if, then, like, levers you could pull on too. Like, let's just theoretical in this. Let's say her rents are $100 below market. I could go back and say, hey, listen, I know you're proposing the 1.2 plus 300K seller carry for 5 years. Can you do it in 2 years? Because all you need to do is just get the rents up over a year, let it season, and then go refinance. So now I could go back and say, hey, listen, I know you don't want to be in this risk position for the last 300K. But how about we shorten this? Just give them 2 years, because I understand that you as a buyer just needs to get it there for 1 year.
Yeah.
If a broker doesn't understand that, that broker's not going to be able to explain that properly. And then there's other ways around it. Like, you could pledge, hey, I could pledge this much liquidity in this bank account as recourse for that 300K, because you know you're not going to screw it up if the bank's going to finance the 1.2. I mean, it's like you're going to sell off some park on homes, probably pay that off. Just theoretical. Yeah, easy. So you could be like, hey, I'll pledge this account, or do a personal guarantee, or I'll put half of that 150K in to be held in escrow as recourse, because you know you're not going to lose it. So like, there's a lot of ways around this to try and bridge the gap, but it comes from all parties understanding it fully. And the problem is, buyers don't explain it good to brokers. Brokers a lot of times just don't understand it. And then sellers, like, a lot of the times would do something like that if they were explained to it correctly. But again, it's understanding the seller's pain points. You know, they need to understand that, it won't bank finance for this. The returns don't make sense at this. Here's the solution to bridge that gap. Then you could just cut the shit. We know if they're sellers or not.
Yeah. Yeah. If the motivation's there, we can get the deal done, but you gotta be willing and lenient on the terms to make it work. You know, because no, I just want 1.5 cash. Well, that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
So to get you that 1.5, here's what we got to do. And then they say, oh, I don't want to do that. So it's like, okay, so you're more focused on the cash. You're not necessarily more focused on the price, is what it sounds like. And then they go, well, I need to use the cash to do X, Y, and Z. There's your motivation, you know, and that's when you can make it work. But dude, so much value today. I mean, you shared a ton. I think a lot of people out there that are trying to buy their first park, they actually know how to talk to a broker now. They actually know how to properly underwrite a deal. And, you know, you came in from a broker's point of view to kind of help buyers put deals together, I feel like. So I feel like a brand new person out there, even an LP, is really going to understand a lot more from today's episode. So, dude, thanks so much for coming on. I appreciate it.
Yeah, anytime. And then one last closing thought is, like, newer buyers, sometimes you just need to accept that you're just not the buyer for a property. And when I mean, like, if you're a newer buyer who's looking at a 100-unit site community in Tampa, Florida, well, you're just not qualified enough to take that down, even if you're at the pricing in comparison to another large group that owns 5 parks surrounding. So, like, if you're a newer buyer, you're not going to get A-plus deals. You got to go out there and get direct to seller and find it yourself. Then now, once you're in your position, Garrett, for example, you have lender relationships, you have operations experience. You're someone who could take stuff down on market where it's competitive, because you are the best buyer for that property. But if sometimes, like, if you're a new buyer, you don't have experience, you're not the best buyer for a property, it's hard to get picked. It's on to you to go find it direct to seller. So that comes into off-market deal sourcing, just like you did with the
you got to get your licks. Yeah, it's just like doing single family, flips. I mean, it's the same exact thing. You can't do $1 million flip your very first flip. You got to start with a $200,000 deal that you're putting 30 grand into and selling for 310 or 350. You know, you got to get your licks. You can't buy a 100+ unit, agency type deal from day one. You got to take your licks with this 10 unit park, a 25 unit park, and you can still make huge wins, huge returns on small parks. They are very slept on. I think you've seen that a 100%. Lot.
Yeah.
Now, don't get me wrong. You can make a lot of money with the $5-10 million deals, but you can still make a good amount of money and pay for all of your expenses with these 25, 35 unit parks. So I'm a huge fan 100%. Of those. One day, if I fall into one of those larger deals, so be it. But right now, I'm just focused on base hits.
Yeah, dude. If I was on buy side, like I'm doing it your process, the way you're going, the types of deals you're buying, that's exactly what I'd be looking at in today's marketplace. So it's kind of funny, coincidental that you've gravitated to, or even the type of deals I would be gravitating towards. Like you've already found that just like on your own. So yeah,
we both think about the industry the same way. I feel like.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, 1,000%. Like, especially when we talk off camera, I know we have the exact same thoughts. There's some things we can't say on camera, but yeah.
Yeah, I love it, dude. Dude, well, you're a stud. Yeah. Glad to be friends with you. Thanks for coming on. So if anybody out there wants to get in touch with you that's listening to this, how can they get in touch with you?
Yeah, email armand@mhpvalue.com. If you are a mobile home park owner that's curious about my value on it, and this isn't just some bullshit broker opinion of value, it's an actual 5-page, fully thought out game plan to how to sell your park, exact metrics as to why it's valued at the number I come up with. You can sign up for a free evaluation on my website. I just need a simple list of rents, utilities, and fixed expenses. I'll do it from there. If you're a buyer, I did previously have a coaching program that I don't really focus on now because I make a lot more money just actively doing deals, but CREDealaccelerator.com. I do have a free deal sourcing guide I used to give out. It's still active on there. You could download it. It's completely free. There's literally no upsells for any of the stuff I'm talking about, but that gives you the step-by-step process of what tools to use, how to research, and how to find off-market sellers. So CREDealaccelerator.com if you guys want to download that free guide, and then reach out to me anytime. And then don't forget, reach out to Garrett if you're an LP and you got money to put into solid cash flowing deals day one.
Yes. Yeah. If you're an LP, if you're a seller, talk with Armand. If you are if you're a buyer too, talk with Armand. But yeah, if you're an LP out there, if you got capital to place, you're interested in buying parks, go to rocketcapital.fund and create an account. We'll add you to the email list. You'll get weekly emails with all of our deals and offerings, and we can both partner and make money together in the MHP space. So that is it for episode 4. Thanks so much, Armand, for hopping on. See you, everybody, in the next episode.
Thank you.